I never thought I'd be sitting in my own kitchen, staring at our bank app, feeling like the floor had just dropped out from under me. It was one of those ordinary Tuesday evenings, rain streaking the windows, the hum of the refrigerator in the background, the faint smell of burnt coffee lingering from earlier. But somehow, everything about that moment felt like it had been waiting to explode. I was scrolling through our joint account, the one Lauren and I had opened when we moved in together in Chicago 3 years ago, and my stomach sank before my brain even had time to catch up. There it was. A withdrawal, but not just any withdrawal. It was big, way bigger than anything we ever spent in one transaction, like a car down payment kind of big. And it wasn't from an ATM or a purchase I could explain. It was transferred to some name I didn't recognize, someone I'd never heard of. My hands shook. I checked the numbers 3 more times, each one confirming the first, like my brain refused to believe the truth without triple verification. Lauren walked in from the living room, headphones in, humming along to some playlist I didn't know she listened to. I tried to steady my voice. "Hey, do you know anything about a $4,200 transfer from our account today?" I kept it casual, like maybe she'd laugh it off and I'd feel like a fool for panicking, but she froze. And the way she pulled her headphones off, the way she avoided my eyes, it hit me like a brick. She didn't even answer at first, just shifted uncomfortably, chewing on the inside of her cheek, like I'd caught her doing something really, really wrong. What transfer?" she finally said, trying for casual, but it came out all jittery and high-pitched. I could feel my pulse in my throat. Something in me just snapped. I pulled my phone across the counter toward her, showing the screen. She looked at it, blinked a couple of times, and then, God, the relief that passed over her face for just a fraction of a second before the guilt settled back in. That's when I realized this wasn't just a mistake, a bill I didn't know about, or a forgotten subscription. This was deliberate. "Lauren," I said, my voice low, controlled, but cutting through the kitchen like glass. "Who's Alex Matthews?" She stuttered, fumbled, swallowed hard, and I watched her mind work like a radar scanning for escape routes. It's someone from work. Just, we had to, cover something for him. He's in a bind." Her explanation made no sense. Something about it felt off, not just off, impossible. Cover something for him? With $4,000? I almost laughed, but it came out more like a sob. My hands gripped the counter so hard I thought I'd leave fingerprints in the wood. I couldn't even process how she had the audacity to say that with a straight face. I felt betrayed, humiliated, like the ground I'd thought I was standing on had been ripped away. "Lauren, tell me the truth. What's going on?" And then it all came spilling out like she'd been holding back a storm for months. She broke, leaned against the counter, eyes shiny. Okay. It's not just that. It's not Alex being in a bind. I've been seeing him." The words hung in the air, heavier than any object I've ever lifted. My first reaction was disbelief, like maybe I'd misheard. I shook my head, trying to reset the moment. You what?" "I'm sorry," she said, barely above a whisper. "I didn't plan for it to happen. I didn't mean to hurt you. But it just happened. And the money I was paying for us to meet." My chest felt like it had been stomped on. Every laugh we'd shared, every late-night pizza, every Saturday morning we spent wandering around Logan Square, it all crashed down into that moment, and suddenly I couldn't tell what was real. I wanted to throw something, scream, but nothing would come out. I went numb, staring at her, trying to reconcile the woman I loved, the life we had built together, with the fact that she had been secretly paying a stranger to see her behind my back. The next hours were a blur. I remember pacing around our apartment, staring at the ceiling, at the rain streaking the windows, at the half-empty bottle of wine we'd bought for date night that now sat untouched. Lauren kept apologizing, following me around, her voice soft and desperate, but I couldn't hear her. My mind was looping over and over. The image of that bank transfer burned into my skull. I kept imagining him, Alex Matthews, some guy I had never met, counting the money she had taken from our account like it was nothing. The audacity of it, and the betrayal, the sheer intimacy of it, was suffocating. I remember sitting down on the couch finally, pulling my knees up, trying to calm the shaking in my hands. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, like asking the question too loudly would make the answer unbearable. 6 months, she said. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought I could, I don't know, handle it. I thought I could keep it separate. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. 6 months. Half a year of stolen weekends, secret texts, whispered conversations in the bathroom while I thought she was at the grocery store. Half a year where she was lying to my face, pretending to care about our plans, about our life together, while she was sneaking around with some other man. My stomach churned, bile rising. I wanted to be angry, but I also wanted to cry. I wanted to scream, but I also wanted to curl up and disappear. She reached out to me, and I flinched. "I'm so sorry," she said again. "I don't want to lose you. I know I've ruined everything, but please." But her apologies were hollow. They couldn't reach the place inside me that had just been shattered. I sat there, feeling like I was watching my own life from outside my body. Every memory tainted by the revelation that she had been living a parallel life in the shadows, one I hadn't been invited to. I ended up going for a long drive that night, rain hammering the windshield, the streets of Chicago blurred into streets of neon and gray. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know if I wanted to scream at her, call the bank, confront him, or just drive until my thoughts stopped. My mind replayed every interaction I'd had with her over the past 6 months, looking for clues, signs I had missed. The subtle ways she would avoid certain topics, the late nights at work that never added up, the random bursts of defensiveness that now made perfect sense. I felt like an idiot, like a fool who had been blind to the person he trusted most. By the time I got back home, the apartment was quiet, Lauren asleep on the couch, a blanket haphazardly thrown over her. I watched her for a long time. Even in sleep, there was a softness in her face, a familiarity that made my stomach twist. I wanted to hate her with every fiber of my being, but I also wanted the comfort of the woman I had fallen in love with. It was a war inside me that didn't end, a war I didn't know I could survive. The next morning I called the bank, trying to figure out how to reverse the transfer, trying to see if there was any legal recourse. The representative was polite, professional, but ultimately helpless. Transfers like that, she explained, are treated as authorized transactions when made from a joint account. I felt a hopelessness wash over me.
Not only had she betrayed me emotionally, she had also weaponized our finances against me. Every cent I thought was secure, every plan we had made for trips, for savings, for emergencies, it was all suddenly uncertain, vulnerable. I didn't confront her again that day. I couldn't. I went into work, but I was absent in every sense. My colleagues noticed the change, the way I avoided eye contact, the tension I carried. My phone buzzed constantly with her messages, each one a mixture of apology, panic, and begging. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I didn't know if I wanted to. Each message was a knife twisting in a wound that was already raw and bleeding. By the evening, I found myself at a bar I used to go to with friends, nursing a whiskey and replaying everything over and over. I needed someone, anyone, to just validate that what I was feeling was real. But when my friends asked, I just shrugged, muttered something about stress at work, and drank another shot. I couldn't tell them. How could I explain that my girlfriend had been seeing another man, paying him with our money for half a year? It sounded like a story from a soap opera, not the life I had known. And yet, every detail was true, every gut-wrenching second of it. Hours later, I walked home in the cold, the streets empty except for the occasional cab splashing through puddles. I got back to the apartment, opened the door, and she was there, waiting, sitting on the floor with her back against the wall, knees up, hands around them. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. I knew why she was there. She was waiting for me to decide if we were over or if I would stay. And I didn't know. I still don't know how I stayed that night. I just collapsed next to her, feeling the exhaustion, the rage, the betrayal, and the aching, heartbreaking love I still had. I realized in that moment that this wasn't just about a transfer or even about an affair. It was about every trust, every promise, every shared plan we had ever made. And now it was all in pieces, scattered across our lives like broken glass. I couldn't see how we could ever pick it up, but I also couldn't walk away completely. Something inside me, somewhere deep and stupid and hopeful, wanted to try to salvage what was left.
even if I didn't know how. And that's when I made the worst decision of my life. Or maybe the only decision I could make at the time. I chose to stay. I chose to let her explain, to let her try to fix what she had destroyed, and I chose to watch every lie unravel before my eyes, knowing that each one could crush me entirely. Because at that moment I realized that betrayal wasn't just about the act, it was about the aftermath, the endless nights of questions, the paranoia, the gnawing fear that this time she might not come back from it. I woke up the next morning feeling hollow. The apartment smelled faintly of last night's coffee, stale and bitter, and Lauren was already gone, her side of the bed perfectly made, her pillow untouched. I stared at the sheets for a long time, thinking about her words, the way she had confessed, the way she had looked at me like she was begging for forgiveness without actually saying it. I felt a weird mixture of relief and disgust. Relief because the truth was out, because the secret had been dragged into the light, and disgust because the person I loved, the person I had trusted with everything, had spent half a year building a secret life, a life I wasn't invited to, a life she was financing with money she took from me. I tried to keep busy, threw myself into work, but everything felt sharper, heavier, like I was moving through some kind of dream where reality had been twisted just slightly, enough that I couldn't trust any of it. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched. Every time my email pinged, my stomach dropped. I wanted to know what she was saying, what she was doing, but I also didn't want to know. It was a war inside me, a war that made me feel like my own mind was a battlefield. By Thursday, I had started going through our bank statements, every line, every transfer, every payment we'd made over the past 6 months. I had to see it all laid out. I had to understand the scale. And the deeper I dug, the more I realized how systematic it had been. Smaller transfers at first, ones I might have overlooked or rationalized as bills or unexpected expenses. Then bigger ones, timed when I was at work late or when she had errands. She had created a schedule almost, a rhythm that matched my blind spots perfectly. I kept seeing Alex Matthews' name pop up, always paired with small notes like dinner, weekend, gift, and then finally the big transfers that were impossible to ignore. I felt violated, like she had stolen pieces of our life to build a shadow existence, and worse, I had been too naive to see it. I confronted her again that night, standing in the living room while the rain drummed against the windows. I was shaking, angry, hurt, exhausted, and yet part of me still loved her. "How many times?" I asked. "How many times did you meet him?" She crumpled, sitting on the couch, her hands covering her face. "More than I can even count," she whispered. "Weekends, lunches, late nights, every chance I got. I didn't even want to think about it. I wanted to see him. I don't know what I wanted, but I didn't want to hurt you. I swear I didn't." Her words were both comforting and sickening. Comforting because she sounded vulnerable, human, fallible. Sickening because she sounded like someone else entirely. The Lauren I had known would have never done this. I had spent years building a life with her, building trust, imagining a future, and now I was forced to confront the fact that my perception of her had been a lie, or maybe just incomplete. And that thought, realizing you never truly knew someone, was almost worse than the betrayal itself. I found myself obsessing over his presence in our lives. I didn't know him, had never met him, yet his existence loomed over mine like a shadow. I imagined him in our apartment, on our streets, in the restaurants we used to frequent together. I imagined the way she must have smiled for him, laughed for him, the way her eyes had been for someone else while I thought they were mine. It was maddening, impossible to shake. And every time she apologized, every time she swore it was over, part of me doubted her. Every time she said she loved me, I felt like the words had been hollowed out, like they'd been used in the past 6 months as a cover, a shield, a way to keep me from seeing what she was really doing. The next week was unbearable. I couldn't sleep properly, couldn't eat, couldn't focus. I kept thinking about the money, about the trust, about the countless little lies that had led to this moment. Lauren tried to explain, to tell me everything, and I listened, but my mind was constantly running ahead, imagining the worst, imagining her still texting him while she sat across from me, imagining him waiting for her on some street corner while I thought she was just running errands. I became paranoid, obsessive, angry at myself for being naive, angry at her for betraying me, angry at the world for letting this happen. I wanted to scream, to break things, to make someone feel the chaos inside me, but there was no outlet. Only silence, only rain, only the relentless echo of betrayal. Then came the night I followed her. I didn't plan it.
I just woke up, saw her texting in the living room, heart racing, stomach twisted, and I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my coat, told her I was going for a walk, and then just drove. I followed her across town, through neighborhoods I didn't know she frequented, and finally, she pulled into a small parking lot behind some strip mall. I watched from my car as she met him, Alex Matthews, the man whose name had haunted my bank statements for months. They embraced like a couple of teenagers sneaking around, like no one else in the world existed, and I felt something inside me break completely. Every ounce of restraint I had left evaporated, replaced by this raw, ugly mixture of rage and grief. I didn't confront them. I couldn't. I just sat in my car for an hour, watching, listening, feeling my chest tighten so much I thought I might collapse. I saw him take her hand, saw her laugh, saw the familiarity, the intimacy I had thought was mine alone. And when they finally parted, when she got back in her car and drove off, I felt hollow in a way I had never felt before. It was one thing to know, abstractly, that she had betrayed me. It was another entirely to witness it, to see the physical reality of what had been happening behind my back. After that night, I started noticing patterns everywhere. Texts she tried to hide, quick exits when I got home early, phone calls she ended abruptly. I became a detective in my own life, obsessed with finding evidence, confirming the reality that I had once trusted completely. I became exhausted, paranoid, resentful, and yet, still, I couldn't walk away. I don't know why. Part of me thought if I stayed, if I watched, if I controlled the narrative, I could somehow protect what little was left of our life. Part of me still loved her, still imagined the life we had built together, still hoped for some version of normalcy that I wasn't allowed to see yet. It was during one of those nights, sitting alone in the apartment while she slept, that I realized something about myself I hadn't wanted to admit. I was addicted to the drama, to the pain, to the betrayal. There was a sick thrill in knowing exactly what she had done, in watching her attempts to reconcile, in seeing the way she tried to rebuild what she had destroyed. I hated myself for it. I hated that a part of me wanted her to fail, wanted to catch her in another lie, wanted the betrayal to be complete so I could finally, definitively be free of the illusion I had been living under. But the more I watched, the more I realized that freedom was terrifying. Freedom meant I had to start over, face the reality of being alone, face the pain without any distractions, and I wasn't ready for that. Lauren tried to explain again, tears streaming down her face as she sat across from me at the kitchen table one night. "I know I've ruined everything," she said. "I know you don't trust me. I know I don't deserve to ask, but please, let me fix this. Let me show you I can stop, that I can be the person you believed in. I love you." I wanted to believe her. I wanted so badly to believe her. But every part of me screamed that she had proven herself untrustworthy, that love wasn't enough, that the betrayal wasn't just a lapse, it was a pattern, a reality, a truth that couldn't be ignored. And yet, I stayed. I asked her to cut off contact, to let me see every message, every bank transaction, to prove her commitment to me. She agreed, reluctantly, but I could see the fear in her eyes. Not fear of losing me, not exactly. Fear that the truth of her own actions would finally come crashing down, that she would be exposed fully. And I didn't know if I wanted to see that either. Days turned into weeks. I lived in a limbo of constant vigilance and simmering resentment, watching Lauren try to rebuild the trust she had destroyed, knowing that one misstep, one hidden message, one tiny lie could undo everything. I became obsessive, checking the bank app multiple times a day, reading every text, every email, trying to find signs that she might still be hiding something, trying to protect myself from the pain that had already been inflicted. And in the quiet moments, when I was alone in our apartment, when the rain fell against the windows and the world outside seemed indifferent, I started to think about the man who had taken half my trust, half my money, half my sense of reality. Alex Matthews. I didn't know him, and yet he had changed my life.
He had invaded our space, our finances, our intimacy. He had become a character in the story of my life, a villain whose presence was inescapable. And part of me hated him, not just for what he had done, but for the fact that he existed in the same world as me, for the fact that he had been allowed access to the person I loved, for the fact that he had made everything I thought I knew meaningless. I didn't confront him either. I couldn't. Part of me wanted to, but I knew it wouldn't solve anything. It would just add another layer of pain, another confrontation, another betrayal. And yet, I thought about him constantly, about the nights he had spent with her, about the money he had taken, about the lies he had enabled. I felt powerless in a way I hadn't known I could, trapped in a story I hadn't wanted to live, unable to escape the consequences of choices that weren't even mine. Every night, I lay awake listening to her soft breathing beside me, wondering if she was thinking about him, about us, about what we had lost. I imagined every detail, every laugh, every touch, every moment of intimacy I had shared with her now tainted by the knowledge of what had been stolen. And I realized that love, even when it survives betrayal, is not enough to erase the damage, is not enough to make you forget, is not enough to return you to the person you were before the trust was broken. It hit me one night, months into this nightmare we'd created, that I had started measuring our life in moments of betrayal rather than love. I'd wake up and instinctively reach for my phone, even before opening my eyes, to check for anomalies in our bank account, texts I didn't know about, notifications that might reveal some hidden truth. I had become a man obsessed, not with Lauren, not even exactly with Alex Matthews, but with evidence, with proof, with the concrete reality of what had been stolen from me. I hated that it had come to this. I hated myself for it, for allowing my love to become a tool for surveillance, for obsession, and yet I couldn't stop. I couldn't let go. It wasn't just financial anymore. Every laugh, every casual conversation, every touch became a question mark. "Who were you thinking about just now?" I asked once as we sat on the couch watching TV, her head resting lightly on my shoulder. She froze, blinked at me, confused, hurt, frustrated, like she'd been caught in some invisible trap. "What?" she said. "You? Him? Alex? I keep wondering if when you laughed, it was him you were thinking about, or when you touched my arm, did you picture him?" The words were cruel, but they were the only ones that fit the reality I was living in. She didn't answer at first, just pressed her lips together and stared at the floor. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. "I'm trying, okay? I'm trying so hard to make it right." And I believed her, in fleeting, terrible moments. But the trust, the thing that had once been the foundation of us, was gone.
There was no rebuilding it in the normal way, brick by brick, day by day. There was only this new architecture of suspicion, of monitoring, of endless analysis of every action, every word, every glance. I started keeping receipts, screenshots of transactions, logs of phone calls. I became the accountant of our relationship, tracking everything like a detective, trying to map the betrayal and, somehow, contain it. Then came the night she left. She didn't tell me she was going out. I came home from a late shift, exhausted, and the apartment was dark. The bed was empty. No notes, no messages. Panic hit me first, then anger, then a strange, cooled realization. This was the pattern now. I drove around the city aimlessly, my headlights cutting through rain-slick streets, imagining her with him again, wondering if she had decided this was easier than trying to repair what she'd broken. My phone buzzed finally. A message from her. I needed to breathe. "I'm sorry." I threw the phone on the passenger seat, fists hitting the steering wheel, my knuckles raw. That was it. That was her apology. Nothing more. No explanation, no reassurance, no truth. Just a tiny acknowledgement that she had disrupted my life and felt bad about it. I wanted to call her, to yell, to demand answers, but I didn't. I couldn't. I sat there, headlights cutting across empty streets, realizing I didn't know if I loved her anymore, or if I was just addicted to the chaos she'd brought into my life. When she came back hours later, she tried to hug me, whisper apologies, explain the need to step away. I pushed her away. Not violently, just enough to make her understand that whatever trust had been left was brittle and thin. "I can't do this," I said, voice tight. "I can't just forgive and forget like nothing happened." She nodded, tears streaming again, and I could see that the guilt she carried was real, but it didn't make it easier for me. In fact, it made it harder. Watching someone break down in front of you, knowing they caused the pain they feel, doesn't make the pain smaller. It makes it bigger, heavier, more suffocating. I realized I wasn't just angry at her. I was angry at myself. Angry for staying. Angry for loving someone capable of this. Angry for letting my entire life hinge on the words and actions of someone who had systematically dismantled the foundation I thought was unshakable. Over the next few weeks, things shifted in ways I couldn't control. Lauren tried to be present, tried to show that she could be trusted again. She cooked meals, left me little notes, tried to rebuild some sense of normalcy. And part of me wanted to believe it, desperately. But the other part of me, the part that had been awake all those nights, replaying the transfers, the meetings, the whispers, the lies, refused. I found myself looking at her across the kitchen table, calculating, analyzing, remembering every small deception, every hidden text, every secret meeting. I felt like I was living in a house built on quicksand, and no matter how much she tried to make it feel like solid ground, I couldn't step without fearing it would swallow me whole. Then came the confrontation that changed everything. I had started going through her phone again, against my better judgment, against the part of me that wanted to preserve even a shred of dignity, and I found something I didn't expect. A string of messages, months old, that hadn't been deleted, that laid out the entire affair in her own words. Not just vague references, not just the financial transactions, but detailed conversations about meetings, plans, fantasies, all of it. My hands shook so badly I dropped the phone. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the screen, my mind spinning out of control. The betrayal wasn't abstract anymore. It was written in cold, clear text, evidence of every stolen moment, every lie, every smile I had thought was mine alone. I confronted her again. "Why didn't you delete this? Why are you keeping it?" I asked, voice trembling, eyes wide. I don't know," she admitted. "Part of me thought you deserved to see it. Part of me, I think I wanted you to hate me. I didn't want to hide anymore." I hated her in that moment. I hated her for making me relive everything, for forcing me to read the words I never wanted to read, for putting me back at the starting line of pain, of suspicion, of despair. And yet, as I looked at her, flawed, vulnerable, human, I also hated myself for still feeling some pull toward her. I hated the way my heart still remembered her touch, the way my mind still imagined her laughter in the apartment we shared, the way I still associated her scent with safety, even though she had shattered it. We argued for hours, voices raised, tears falling, furniture knocked slightly out of place. It wasn't a fight about the affair anymore. It was about the life that had been stolen, about the trust that had been demolished, about the grief that had no outlet. I said things I didn't mean, things that were sharp and cruel and meant to wound, and she said things that broke me, admissions of guilt and shame and self-loathing that made me realize this wasn't just my story anymore. It was ours, twisted, warped, impossible. The aftermath was brutal. We slept in separate rooms, spoke in clipped sentences, and existed in the same apartment like strangers. I became hyper-aware of every little thing she did, the way she walked past the kitchen, the way she laughed at a TV show, the way she answered the phone. Every action felt loaded with meaning. Every word was a test, every glance a potential lie. I started keeping a journal, not to reflect, not to understand, but to catalog, to document, to make sure if this all fell apart completely, I had proof, a record, a lifeline back to reality that was no longer anchored in trust, but in evidence. And yet, life outside the apartment carried on with terrifying normalcy. My coworkers joked about weekends, about relationships, about the mundane. They had no idea what was happening behind closed doors. Friends invited me out. I refused, because every night out, every casual dinner, every laugh outside our apartment felt like a betrayal too. A reminder that the world didn't care about my suffering. Only the walls of our apartment, the rain streaking the windows, and the lingering scent of her perfume cared. And that wasn't enough. I realized in those months that what she had done, what we were living through, wasn't just a story of infidelity.
It was an invasion, a disruption, a seismic shift in my perception of the world. Every plan, every expectation, every image of normalcy I had carried in my mind was shattered, and I had to navigate it while living under the same roof as the person responsible, pretending in some moments that we were just two people trying to coexist, while in reality we were negotiating a minefield built on lies, money, and stolen intimacy. And I hated that I was still in love with her. It all came to a head one Saturday night. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like it's pressing in on you from every wall. Lauren was sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through a magazine, pretending nothing had changed. I watched her from the couch, feeling the familiar tangle of anger, grief, and longing twisting inside me. Months had passed since the first revelation, but nothing had healed. I couldn't forget, and she couldn't undo what she had done.
Every small act, every smile, every attempt at normalcy, it all felt tainted. I finally spoke, my voice low, almost a growl. We need to talk, really talk. Not about finances, not about evidence, not about promises you can't keep. About us, about what we've become. She looked up, her eyes wide and nervous, and for a second, I saw the girl I had fallen in love with, the one who used to stay up with me, talking about nothing, laughing until our sides hurt. But the second it registered, the memory twisted, like it had been corrupted by 6 months of betrayal. "What do you want to say?" she asked softly, her hands clasped tightly together, knuckles white. "I want to know how this ends, Lauren," I said, my chest tight. "Because right now, I don't know if I even like the person sitting across from me, or if I even like myself anymore for staying." She swallowed hard, and for the first time in months, the weight of what she had done seemed to physically crush her. I don't know," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to fix this. I just know I love you. I know I've made a mess of everything, but I can't imagine my life without you." And there it was, the cruelest thing of all. I still loved her. I still wanted her. And yet, the thought of touching her, of sharing a life with her, was unbearable. Every instinct told me to run, to cut off every connection, to reclaim some sense of dignity. But my heart refused. It was a war between desire and self-preservation, and neither side was winning. We sat there for hours, talking and arguing, crying and shouting, revisiting every detail of her affair. Each revelation felt like a fresh wound. I learned things I never wanted to know. The lies she had told her coworkers to cover up his presence. The gifts she had bought him that she had told me were for work. The messages she had deleted and then restored when she thought I wasn't looking. Every detail was brutal, and yet, I couldn't stop listening. I couldn't stop caring. Finally, in the early hours of the morning, I left. I couldn't stay any longer without exploding. I grabbed my keys and walked into the cold Chicago streets, rain dripping from the edges of my jacket, soaking my hair, mixing with the tears I couldn't stop. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just walked, each step heavier than the last, every memory of her twisting like a knife in my chest. I found myself outside a small diner near the lake, the kind that stayed open late for truckers and night shift workers. I sat in a booth, nursing a coffee that had long since gone cold, staring at my reflection in the window, and barely recognizing the man looking back. He was hollow, haunted, exhausted. The betrayal had changed him, reshaped him into someone cautious, paranoid, angry, and yet still capable of love. A love that had been weaponized against him, that had been betrayed in the most intimate ways imaginable. And then I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just angry at Lauren anymore. I wasn't even angry at Alex Matthews. I was angry at myself.
Angry that I had allowed myself to be blindsided. Angry that I had stayed. Angry that I had let love tie me to someone capable of this level of deception. I was angry that I had lost control. Then my sense of safety, of reality, of what was mine, had been taken and twisted beyond recognition. And I was angry because part of me still wanted to forgive her, to believe in us, to pretend like this could ever be normal again. I returned home hours later, cold and exhausted, and found Lauren asleep on the couch. I watched her for a long time, feeling the familiar pull of love and attachment mixed with the horror of everything she had done. I wanted to shake her awake, to demand answers, to yell until my voice was raw. But I didn't. I just sat there, watching, listening to the rain, thinking about everything we had lost. The next weeks were a delicate, terrifying balance. Lauren tried desperately to prove herself, cutting off contact with anyone remotely connected to Alex, being transparent about every transaction, every message, every movement. I checked everything, recorded everything, cataloged everything. It was a life of surveillance, suspicion, and partial trust. And yet, despite the constant monitoring, the love I had felt didn't disappear entirely. It lurked beneath the surface, quiet and insistent, reminding me of what we had been before everything fell apart. It wasn't perfect. It couldn't be perfect. Every time she left the room, I felt the old paranoia flare up. Every time her phone buzzed, my stomach dropped. Every time she laughed, part of me imagined it directed at someone else. Remembered, stolen, never mind. I became exhausted in ways I hadn't known were possible, carrying the weight of betrayal, the burden of obsessive vigilance, and the impossible love that refused to die. One night we had a fight that escalated beyond reason. Voices raised, tears streaming, furniture knocked slightly askew. I shouted things I didn't mean, and she shouted back, admissions of guilt and shame spilling out in waves. And then, in a quiet moment after the storm, she said something that stopped me cold. "I never wanted to ruin us," she whispered, voice trembling. I wanted to feel alive again. I didn't think about what it would do to you. I didn't think about us." The words didn't excuse anything, didn't make the betrayal less real, didn't return what I had lost. But they crystallized something that had been lurking beneath the surface all along. This wasn't just about her actions. It was about us. About the fragility of trust. About the fragility of life and love itself. And in that moment, I realized that we were trapped together. Not by love. Not by forgiveness. But by the wreckage we had created. And the impossibility of starting over completely. Months passed. And things stabilized in a fragile, precarious way. I learned to live with suspicion. To catalog my fears and measure my pain. To watch Lauren rebuild herself in the only way she could. And somewhere along the line, I realized something equally terrifying and strangely comforting. The betrayal had changed us. Yes. But it had also revealed the raw truth of who we were. I wasn't blind anymore. I wasn't naive. And she was human, flawed, desperately trying to make amends, even if she could never fully undo the damage she had done. We stayed together, not because everything was fixed, not because the past had been erased, not because trust was fully restored. We stayed because we had been broken together, because love, twisted, raw, painful, and complicated, was still there, lurking beneath the surface, impossible to ignore. And every day was a negotiation between hope and fear, between desire and self-preservation, between the person I thought I knew and the person she had revealed herself to be. Sometimes late at night, when the apartment is silent except for the rain tapping against the windows, I sit alone in the dark and think about Alex Matthews. I think about the money, the stolen moments, The lies that built a parallel life behind my back. And I realized that he doesn't even matter anymore. What matters is the wreckage that remains. The fragile thread connecting two people who have been shattered by love and betrayal. And the impossible task of piecing together a life that can never be the same again.
Lauren sleeps beside me now, and I watch her, feeling the tension between forgiveness and resentment, love and caution, hope and despair. I've learned that life doesn't offer clean resolutions. It doesn't hand back what's been lost. It doesn't undo betrayal or erase pain. It only gives you the choice of what to do next, the choice of how to live with the scars, and the courage, or madness, to keep trying, day after day, to navigate the life you still want, even if it will never be the one you imagined. And sometimes, when the rain falls against the windows and the city hums softly in the distance, I feel the weight of it all, the love, the betrayal, the money, the lies, the nights of fear and obsession. And I realize that surviving this is not about winning, or punishing, or undoing the past. It's about breathing, moving forward, and learning to coexist with the pieces that remain, however jagged, however sharp, however unbearably real. We're still here, together, shattered, scarred, cautious, vigilant, but still here. The past is written in bank statements, text messages, and the memory of laughter that no longer feels innocent. The present is a fragile negotiation of trust and desire. And the future? Well, the future is something we'll navigate one day at a time, knowing that nothing will ever be simple, nothing will ever be clean, nothing will ever be completely ours again. But for now, we breathe, we exist, we survive. The story of what happened, of the money, the affair, the betrayal, is ours alone, a wound that never fully heals, but a truth that can't be ignored. And I carry it with me, every day, in the quiet moments, in the sharp pangs of memory, and in the impossible, relentless love that refuses to let go. We live with it, we endure it, we survive. And somehow, that's enough.